Hello, everyone, and welcome back to PastFound. Tonight, we investigate a case that was never meant to surface, an account buried for decades beneath fear, manipulation, and the power of a small town society that operated in plain sight. The names of people and locations have been changed to protect those who bravely stepped forward. Many of the groups mentioned in this retelling still exist today, hidden behind charity programs and religious outreach projects. If you're new here, subscribe to PastFound and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, especially the ones they rather you never heard. Emily Martin wasn't close to her extended family, and even less so to her great aunt Marjorie. She had met the woman exactly once at a family gathering when she was barely a teenager. Marjorie had been quiet, observant, and almost unnervingly polite. Emily remembered her as the type of person who blended seamlessly into the background. So when a lawyer called to tell her she was Marjorie's sole heir, she felt lost. Why her? Why now? Emily's life in Denver was stable but monotonous. Marketing job, small apartment, predictable schedule. A sudden inheritance didn't just disrupt her life, it intrigued her. The estate included a two-story farmhouse in rural Redwood, Wyoming, 18 acres of land, a modest bank account, and, according to the lawyer, a lifetime's worth of personal records. Emily couldn't explain it, but something about the phrasing unsettled her. The next morning, she packed her car, requested a temporary leave from work, and headed northwest toward Redwood. Redwood looked like it had been frozen in time sometime around 1958. A single diner, a hardware store older than its owner, a main street with washed-out signs and window displays full of dust instead of merchandise. But the strangest thing Emily noticed was the atmosphere. Some towns feel sleepy. Some feel forgotten. Redwood felt watched. As she drove through, she saw curtains shift, faces vanish from windows, and the old men lingering outside the barbershop fall silent as her car passed. By the time she reached her great-aunt's farmhouse, she was already uneasy. The lawyer, Calvin Pierce, greeted her in the driveway. Calvin spoke gently, with slow, deliberate pauses, as if choosing his words carefully. Marjorie had been deeply involved with a local organization called the Redwood Circle, a nonprofit charity founded in the early 1970s. He said, "They did wonderful work. Meals for the elderly, housing assistance, job training. They kept Redwood alive." But Emily noticed that every time Calvin mentioned the circle, he avoided eye contact. She dismissed it as grief. She was wrong. The house smelled of old books and cedarwood. Dust coated every surface except the kitchen, which was surprisingly spotless. Emily began unpacking her bags, but was distracted by how many locks were installed on the inside of the doors. 3 on the front door, 2 on each window. Even the interior doors had deadbolts. It was as if Marjorie had been terrified of something. Emily chalked it up to elderly paranoia. But the more she explored, the less sense things made. The phone line had been cut, cleanly and intentionally. Several closets had heavy metal bars installed from the inside. A large wooden trunk in the attic had a chain wrapped around it 3 times. And then there were the notebooks, stacks of them labeled by month and year, filling a bookshelf in the living room. Emily didn't open them. Not yet. She wasn't ready. On Emily's 3rd day in Redwood, she heard a soft knock at the door. When she opened it, a man stood, smiling warmly. Tall, silver hair, gentle eyes. A pastor's uniform. "Miss Martin," he said kindly. "I'm Pastor Gerald Hawthorne. I lead the Redwood Circle. Your great-aunt was a treasured member." He handed her a casserole dish, chicken, rice, and vegetables arranged too perfectly to be homemade. "We'd love to welcome you at our weekly community dinner," Hawthorne continued. "Your aunts rarely miss them." Emily hesitated, but loneliness and curiosity won out. She agreed. As Pastor Hawthorne walked back to his car, she noticed something unsettling. He didn't check his surroundings. He didn't wave at neighbors. He didn't glance at houses. He kept his eyes straight ahead, an almost military focus. It was the first sign that something about the Redwood Circle was orchestrated. The dinner was held in a basement beneath what used to be a Methodist church. The room was warm and bustling. Around 60 people sat around long tables, chatting while volunteers filled their plates. Everyone seemed relieved to see Pastor Hawthorne walk in. A few even stood when he passed, as if acknowledging royalty. Hawthorne delivered a short prayer, and the meal began. Emily sat next to Linda Merrick, a cheerful woman in her 50s who oversaw the thrift store. Linda talked nonstop. The circle cared for the elderly, they provided emergency food deliveries, they housed families in need. They ran a job training program for struggling workers. It sounded noble, perfect, too perfect. When Emily mentioned wanting to learn more about Marjorie's work, Linda's eyes lit up. Oh, your aunt was extraordinary. She understood the importance of discretion. The circle values trust, Emily. Loyalty keeps this town together. The sentence was delivered with a smile, but the kind that didn't reach the eyes. The next morning, Emily visited the thrift store on Main Street. Inside, Linda greeted every customer by name, except the one she drew into the back room. Emily noticed certain customers never paid. Others paid far more than the items were worth. Linda locked the back door after each private conversation. Some customers left with sealed envelopes instead of merchandise. The back room itself was overflowing with donations, far more than the store could ever process. When Emily asked why so much was being stored instead of sold, Linda simply said, "Oh dear, Redwood has its own rhythm. We take care of our own. You'll understand soon." That sentence replayed in Emily's mind for days. To feel useful and to distract herself from the strange atmosphere, Emily volunteered for the circle's Saturday food deliveries. Her assigned driver, Daniel Ruiz, was quiet and polite, almost too polite. The route took them to impoverished trailer parks, isolated farmhouses, and elderly residents living alone. At each stop, Daniel knocked, delivered groceries, spoke quietly with the resident, received an envelope or small parcel, returned to the truck without answering Emily's questions. When she asked again what the envelopes were, Daniel said, "Gratitude donations. Most of these folks don't have anyone else. The circle is all they have." He said it like a mantra. That night, unable to sleep, Emily opened one of her great aunt's notebooks. What she found changed everything. The early entries were harmless, lists of chores, reminders, recipes. But the tone shifted abruptly about 6 years earlier. Words like surveillance, deliveries, false charity, elder targeting began appearing. One entry read, "The circle is not what it claims. They deliver more than food. They use the widowed, the lonely. They test loyalty. Those who question disappear." Another entry described Linda at the thrift store. Backroom exchanges, unmarked boxes, cash drop-offs disguised as donations. Marjorie wrote that she tried to warn others, but members of the circle began watching her. They isolated her, cut her phone line, threatened her subtly through friendly check-ins. Her last entries were barely legible, scrawled in shaking handwriting. "I am not safe. I hear footsteps outside at night. They want what I found. They know I know. And then, if anything happens to me, the truth is in the house, hidden behind the stone." Emily froze. Behind what stone? For 2 days, Emily tore apart the house looking for the hiding spot. Finally, in the basement, she found it, a section of the foundation where one stone was slightly misaligned. Behind it was a manila envelope filled with photos, financial ledgers, receipts, lists of names, maps, and a detailed journal. Marjorie had documented everything. The Redwood Circle was not a charity. It was a criminal enterprise operating under religious cover. According to the documents, for decades, the Circle had used elderly residents as unwitting drug couriers.
Hidden inside food baskets were small packages containing narcotics. Collected payments through the thrift store, marked as donations. Targeted isolated elderly residents, manipulated them into signing over power of attorney and wills. Eliminated those who became suspicious. Documented in Marjorie's notes were at least 14 deaths, all ruled natural. Controlled the sheriff's department. Sheriff Donna Keaton had accepted bribes for years. Used community dinners to identify new vulnerable people. Emily's stomach twisted. This wasn't corruption. It was a system, a machine, and Marjorie had been trying to expose it. That night, Emily heard footsteps outside the house, slow, deliberate, crunching gravel under heavy boots. She turned off the lights. A shadow moved outside her window. Then came the knocking. Soft, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps again. Just like the notes described. Emily grabbed her phone, but she had no service. Someone had tampered with the cell booster. The knocking grew louder. A voice whispered, "Miss Hartman, open the door. We need to talk." It was Pastor Hawthorne. Emily didn't move. After 2 minutes of silence, he spoke again, this time colder. "It's dangerous being alone out here. The Circle would be disappointed if something happened to you." He waited. Then he left. Emily didn't sleep that night. At dawn, she packed everything, the notes, the ledgers, the photographs, and drove straight to the state capitol. She didn't stop, didn't eat, barely blinked. At the Wyoming Attorney General's office, she demanded protection and handed over every piece of evidence. 2 days later, Redwood exploded. State investigators, federal agents, and county officials raided the town. Pastor Hawthorne was arrested mid-sermon. Linda was caught destroying documents in the thrift store. Daniel attempted to flee but was stopped at a highway checkpoint. Sheriff Keaton was dragged out of her office in handcuffs. It took months to unravel the full extent of the Redwood Circle's crimes. The charges included drug trafficking, elder abuse, fraud and property theft, money laundering, conspiracy, and 23 counts of homicide. 23 innocent people, most elderly, all alone. Just like Marjorie. Emily testified in court and was placed under temporary state protection. She sold the property months later, donating every penny to genuine elder care organizations across the country. She never returned to Redwood. Marjorie's house now sits abandoned, the windows boarded up, the land overgrown. Locals avoid it, whispering that the past still lingers there. And maybe it does. Because according to investigators, despite the arrests, several high-ranking members of the Redwood Circle were never found. They vanished the day the raid happened. Some believe they disappeared into other towns, other communities, other charities, waiting to rebuild what they lost.